Hi, welcome back. Today is measures of associations. Okay, so it's very common that I even have heard of this term called association is not causation, right? So today we shall cover a bit about what is association and why it's important to measure it. Okay, so there are 4 things I want to cover today. First thing is risk. I think we covered this already. Relative risk, odds ratio, rate ratio, just a recap. This concept that some of you may come across attributable risk, population attributable risk, association versus causation, and what are the criteria for causal inference, and Hughes criteria for causality. Okay, so these are 4 things I want to cover. Hopefully I can cover in 45 minutes or so. Okay, any questions? Now I'll move on. Okay, we'll cover this, right? So risk in epidemiology refers to how probable an event will occur in a specified population over a period. So this thing we'll cover already. Anyone remember what's relative risk? Or has forgotten? It's been a few weeks. What is relative risk? What's the difference between relative risk, odds ratio, and rate ratio? I can remember. Okay, never mind. That's why you recap. So relative risk is very simple. It is the probability of an event in the exposed, for example, smokers, versus event in the unexposed, the non-smokers. So then you can come up with a ratio. Okay, so this ratio will either be equals to 1, no difference. More than 1 means the event is a risk factor. Less than 1, it means that it is a protective factor. For example, lung cancer in smokers versus lung cancer in non-smokers. You find that lung cancer in smokers is higher. So smoking is an increased risk factor for lung cancer. Okay, and maybe exercise. Okay, so heart disease, people exercise versus heart disease, people don't exercise. So those who exercise have a lower risk of heart disease. Therefore, exercise is a protective function or factor. Okay, straightforward. This is usually in cohort studies where you compare patients who are exposed versus patients who are not exposed. So this is cohort study. So you actually follow them out over time. So the famous one in Singapore is the Chinese cohort study. There's also the Indian cohort study and also the Malay cohort study. So all these studies takes 5, 10, 20, 30 years. Just follow them up. And when the researcher is too old, you'll pass the cohort to the next group. Okay, so this is your career job. Just follow and follow and follow. And every few years, you recall the patients, and then they get some of their measurements. So that's a cohort study. Another thing that some of you may know is randomized controlled trial. Straightforward, this is often in the medication trial. What they do is they get one group of patients keen to do a trial. Then they will be randomized into either the drugs or the control. Okay, so by doing this, hopefully the distribution is similar in the 2 groups. Okay, I did cover this already. So smokers are 6 times more likely to develop lung cancer compared to non-smokers. So here is, let's say it's 36%, and here is 6%, so it's 6 times. Any question? Quite easy, right? I think I covered this already. Next one is odds ratio. This is referring to the odds event in the exposed group versus event in the unexposed groups. Okay, the odds. So the calculation is the same, similar. It's only when when they are small. For example, when OR goes to 1, odds ratio goes 1, no difference again. If it's higher than 1, it means higher risk or higher odds. And if it's less than 1, it means there's a protective or lower odds. Okay, this one is on case control studies. What the difference is because the cases and the control do not have the same exposure. Okay, so data follow them up. So you're looking at people with the event versus people without the event. Case are those with lung cancer. Control are people without lung cancer. Then you compare their exposure because you cannot directly calculate probability. And this often occurs when outcome is rare. Otherwise, you need to follow up very long or you need a huge population. So for rare event, you need to use this. So for example, in a case control study on smoking and lung cancer, they compared people who have lung cancer versus those without lung cancer, the cases and the control. And they found that smokers have twice the odds of developing lung cancer compared to non-smokers. Okay. No question, move on. Okay, rate ratio, what is it? Okay, rate is very simply, it's just the rate of an event, how often, rate there's a time element. the rate of the event in the exposed group over the rate in the event in the unexposed group. And the rate is the number of event over the person time at risk. So it depends on how much time you contribute to the study. Your person time may be different. For example, if a person spent 5 years, so his person time is 5 times 1, so it's 5 years. Another person drop out after 2 years, so it's just only 2 years. So it add up, so it's only 7 years. Okay, so first person contributed 5 years, second person contributed only 2 years. So overall, it's only 7 years, okay, rather than 2. So same thing, 1 is same, more than 1 higher rate, less than 1 lower rate, okay? So this often occurs in cohort study where you're measuring things over time. Usually for chronic disease, long term, so you measure them over time. Okay, so that's what it means. If the rate ratio is 2, it means smokers experience twice the incidence rate of lung cancer compared to non-smokers. Okay. Okay, now right, here this is the most important slide. It summarizes everything. So let's go through again. Relative risk, odds ratio, rate ratio. Okay, so the users, firstly the users. So for this, odds ratio used for case control study. And usually events are rare. Okay, this is where you do case control study, so it's more efficient. For cohort study, you use either relative risk or rate ratio. Okay, so this is when you do that. Usually this is for prospective studies, means you follow the patient up longitudinally. This is called prospective. Odds ratio usually is retrospective, means you look backwards. Okay. Rate ratio can be also be longitudinal, prospective study, and so on. Okay. So this is a summary of what I just covered. Any question before we move on? Okay. We talk about cohort study, talk about all this, right? So the next slide I explain to you the difference. What's the difference between a cohort study, a randomized controlled trial, a case control study, and a cross-sectional study? Okay, let's start with, okay, so first thing, cohort study. So you start with a non-disease group. For example, those without lung cancer, you follow them up. So usually this is a healthy cohort. So no disease, you follow them up, and then you compare new cases because there are no disease, right? So these are new cases. So you come up with either a risk ratio or rate ratio. Similarly, for randomized controlled trial, you can also do that. You compare two groups, one without disease, one with disease, and compare the difference over time. Again, this is new cases. Okay, case control study on the other hand is different. Okay, case control study start with those with the disease. For example, lung cancer. You recruit people who are similar without lung cancer. Then compare what are their exposure. Okay, so those with lung cancer, you found that 70% smokes. Those without lung cancer, you found that only 20% smoke. Then you suspect, is it because of smoking? That's why we come up with this thing called odds ratio. And because these are diseased people and not new cases, this is actually prevalent. Okay, prevalent. Same thing for cross-sectional study. This is from a sample. For example, you look at people currently now, those with lung cancer and those who are currently smoking. So they assess both the exposure and the disease status simultaneously, and therefore you cannot come up with any causation because you do not know which came first. Okay. So for example, taking sweet drinks and diabetes. Okay, so you assess people, you found that those who take 7 cups of tea, and then they have diabetes. Another group of people without diabetes take 3 cups of tea. Okay, so you don't know whether is it because you take the sugar drink, 7 cups, you get diabetes, or is it because you have diabetes? That's why you must take 7 cups of sweet drinks. The causality is not there. Okay, one of my students asked me about reverse causality. Because you are taking both at the same time, you don't know which came first. Is it because you have diabetes? That's why you must take sweet drinks. Same thing. Is it because you're fat, you eat a lot, that's why you're fat? Or because you're fat, you eat, that's why you eat a lot? Because the direction is not clear. Okay? Again, this is odds ratio and prevalent. So this is the study. We'll cover this more in depth, I think, in the next couple of lectures. Before I go on, any question? I see a raised hand. It's not. Today very quiet. Why post lunch is it?
No, my parents.
Okay, maybe that's why. Okay. Okay, I hope this is useful. Okay, very important. Okay, if any question, please ask. Okay, then this session will be more useful. All this you already know already. How many already know all this? Okay, so it depends on what sort of research study you read. This is actually quite common in epidemiological studies. Okay, move on. Okay, next talk about attributable risk. Okay, straightforward. Attributable risk, AR, is just the probability of the event in the exposed. For example, lung cancer in smokers versus lung cancer in the non-smoker. So idea is straightforward. If we remove the smoking effect, how many can we reduce? Okay, this sounds very simple, right? For example, if let's say smokers has 20 cases of lung cancer or 20% risk of lung cancer, non-smoker has 5% risk of lung cancer. So 20 minus 15, 20 minus 5 is 15%, right? So the hypothesis is that if we remove smoking, then we only have 5% of the cancer risk. So 15% of the cancer risk is due to smoking. Okay. The interpretation is the amount of risk that could be eliminated if the exposure is removed. So if they are the same, smoke or don't smoke, cancer risk is 15%, then it's 0. So there's no excess risk due to smoking. Similarly, if this is higher and this is lower, then of course there's excess risk due to the exposure. Well, what if this is lower than this one? What if this is lower than this one? What if it's negative?
Protective.
Yeah, it's protective. Okay. So interpretation is protective. Then maybe you want to redo the other way around. Maybe the unexposed you put here and exposed. So I say if, for example, those who are not exercising has a 5% risk of heart disease. Those who exercise has a 3% risk of heart disease. So the attributable risk is actually 2%, but you must reverse it. Okay. Otherwise, it's very difficult to interpret. Okay, this is commonly used in cohort study, okay, and public health research. It helps guide policy. So this is like a what if scenario. What if you remove a certain risk factor? What is the impact? Okay, for example, so these are some things. For example, what example can I give off? Smoking is one good example. Sweetened beverages, all these things can talk about that. Okay, example, if the attributable risk is 70% for lung cancer in smokers, then the postulation is that 70% of lung cancer cases could be prevented if smoking is eliminated. Okay, first thing is this one using a very simplistic method. Usually in real life, there are interactions. So one factor remove, another factor become more stronger. Okay.
Wait.
For example, let's say we assume that smoking cigarettes is different from vaping. Okay. So if let's say 70% of lung cancer is smoker, okay, and if we remove smoking, but a proportion of the patients instead of smoke, they vape, then you cannot get 70%. It's much lower. Okay, because there's another probability for them to do that.
Wait.
Yeah.
So the risk for lung cancer in smokers, for example, is 20%.
Yes.
And unexposed 3%.
Yes, correct. 3%, 17%, correct. So this is how
then why do they say 17% of lung cancer cases in smokers?
Okay, so it's because you are the exposed here. So here is 20%. So it's 20%. So the way to look at it is if for smokers, 20% have lung cancer. Of the 20% in those smokers, we assume that 3% is not due to smoking. So if the smokers don't smoke, 70% can be reduced. So it's talking about the smokers.
But it's 17 out of 20.
70% out of them, yes. So actually it's 70% out of the 20%, actually, if you look at it that way. Yeah, but here it's talking about the absolute number, 70%. Okay. Yeah, because we are talking about the exposure removal, so you're talking about the smokers. Okay, and you're talking about the event, which is the lung cancer. Okay. So anyway, this is the way to calculate it. So once you have attributable risk, you have this thing called population attributable risk. Quite complicated, right? But actually that's simple. You just take the probability of event in the population minus the probability event in the unexposed group. So usually what you do is just take the AR times how common the disease is. Okay, attributable risk times how common the disease is, or how common the exposure is, they can get the answer. Yeah. Okay, so back to this. So quite complicated formula. So P exposed times relative risk minus 1. P exposed times relative risk minus 1 plus 1. This will give you a population attributable risk. This represents the percentage of cases in a population that could be prevented if the exposure is removed. So the higher the PAR, okay, the more it means the more we should focus on it. So some condition, for example, let's say smoking, let's say something rare. Let's say heroin, for example. Let's say taking heroin has a 99% risk of dying, for example, taking heroin. But if heroin is a very small percentage of the problem, your PAR, population attributable risk, is actually quite low. Okay, so population attributable risk look at two things. How common is the disease or how common is the problem versus what is the effect size of the reduction? Okay, so that's why you need to look at both.
So it takes into account basically like how much is exposed.
Yes, the smoking is important because how many people smoke will affect your PAR, population attributable risk. Okay, your risk factor. Okay, next question. Actually, I kind of answer it. Who want to try? Okay, you can try, but you're so great. What is the relationship between attributable risk and population attributable risk?
The percentage of the exposed.
Correct. So actually, what is prevalent? I use the wrong. I use incidence. Actually, it's prevalence. Okay, so PAR is attributable risk times how prevalent is the exposure, not disease exposure. For example, smoking. For example, heroin use. So if the exposure is common, even if attributable risk is small, your PAR is high. Okay, so the first thing is what is the prevalence or how common is the exposure? It can be smoking, can be obesity, or for example, sugar. Okay, so prevalence of obesity. Okay, maybe attributable risk of obesity is very small, let's say it's 5%. But because so many people are fat, that's why our population attributable risk is quite high. Okay, because in Singapore, at least 10% of people are obese. Okay, I think at least 10%, maybe more. So, okay, you take away US, Australia, even worse. So obesity rate is very high in the world. That's why that's why even attributable risk. So this will also accumulate. Okay. Okay, we're very good on time. As usual, I speak very fast. So any question or move on? Okay, so concept is very clear. Okay, now we talk about association versus causality. Okay, often you hear association is not causality. Okay, let's go through what are they. So association means that you found a relationship. So it can be either A increase, B increase, A increase, B decrease, or it can be linear or could be non-linear. So there are many ways that the relationship can be. Next is actually much more stronger. This is called A causes B. Okay. So for example, you slap the kid, okay, then the kid do badly. Okay. Or is it because the kid do badly, that's why I slap the kid? Which is which? Or you don't slap kid anymore. Okay. Okay. So anyway, association can be direct, indirect, but doesn't imply the cause and effect. Okay, very important. No, doesn't imply cause and effect. It's just association. So you write in a research journal, right? Use association. Every time I see people doing a cross-section study, they use causation. Not possible. Even if it's a cohort study, causation is also not so strong, not so easy. That's why later I'll show you the Hughes criteria. So be very careful when you use the word causation. Okay, A cause B, not so straightforward. This is not like common language lah. You cause me to fail. Okay, you cause me to fail my exam. Okay, in scientific terms, I cause you to fail exam. You need to specify certain criteria. Okay, otherwise you cannot just say people cause this thing to happen. Okay, yeah. So next is implication. Two factors are related, but doesn't mean that they one cause the other or so on. Indicate that one factor is responsible for causing the others. For example, lighter. So I'm sure you heard of the idea, right? People who have lighter has a high risk of lung cancer. You know how that? Why? Do you have lighter? Do you have anyone here have lighter?
Lighter is highly associated to smoking.
Correct. So it's actually the smoking that is causing the lung cancer, not the lighter. The lighter is associated with smoking, and therefore lighter is associated with lung cancer. Okay, so there are some things must be very careful, you see. Or the very typical story is that this is one you can read. Coffee drinking reduces diabetes risk. Why? You can Google it, it's quite true, you know. So this one was I did this for one of my master public health. One of the postulation I came out with is that if you drink coffee, you cannot drink soft drinks. So it's not that coffee reduces diabetes. It's because you don't drink a soft drink. That's why it reduces the risk of diabetes. I mean, this is what I mean by association, may or may not be causation. I'm not saying this is the answer. I'm just saying that when you see that coffee is associated with lower risk of diabetes, you must think why. Is it because you take coffee, that's why you don't take other things, or coffee drinker do some other things? Yeah. Or because you drink coffee, you're more active.
Yeah.
Then the non-coffee drinker are sleeping like me all the time. And that's why so it's not the coffee that causes the decrease in diabetes. The coffee makes people more active to work. Non-drinker of coffee sleeps more and therefore higher risk of diabetes. Okay. So these are some things to consider lah. Okay. So criteria, this is through simple statistics. A go up, B go up, A go down, B go up, or whatever lah. This is through correlation, statistical analysis. Okay, I think some of this is not statistical class, so now go through what is all the correlation. What other one? I can't remember the other covariation, all the covariate, all these things, and all the tests for Spearman correlation and what the other one? Shit, can't remember already. One is Spearman, one is the other one. Okay, anyway, I'm not talking about that. Okay. Huh? Cohen is the Cohen is correlation. Spearman is more for what is Spearman? What's the other one? Can't remember that. Anyway, these are statistics. So I'm not going to go through statistics today. Okay, for causation, you must go through a few things. Temporality, which comes first? Okay, you say A cause B, then A must come first, right? Otherwise, there's no reason, right? Okay, so go back. Chicken and egg, which came first? Okay, so let's say chicken are associated. So don't need to talk about which came first. Okay, strength. Okay, if it's strong, more likely possible. Weak doesn't mean it's not possible, just less likely. Consistency, the more consistent studies you have to repeat the study, the more likely it is causality. Okay, whether is it biologically possible? Lighter and lung cancer, is it biologically possible?
Inhale.
Yeah, not really, right? Who knows, man? So yeah, this is a thing. And Hughes criteria, we shall cover later. Okay, now we cover the Hughes criteria. First, temporal precedence. The cause must be before the effect in time. That's why back to epidemiology, time, place, and person. Okay. Covariation, change in the cause must correlate with change in effect. Okay. But this is the same as association. Elimination of confounder. Confounders are factors, for example, smoking. So in the example, lighter, smoking, and lung cancer. The confounder is actually smoking because lighter are associated with smoking, which also increase lung cancer. So you look for people who have lighter but don't smoke. Okay, then you find that actually the risk of lung cancer is much lower, almost non-existent. So you know that, then you know that the lighter, just having a lighter doesn't mean you get lung cancer. Okay. Manipulation, of course, you can do an experiment, you can test it out, you can do a randomized controlled trial to see whether it doesn't really cause it. Okay. Consistent, repeat many studies. That's why a lot of times you see in this day and age, right? You repeat a study, right? Cannot publish. Because they just say it's incremental research. They're looking for new studies. So there's actually a value to repeat a study, right? You think about it. If you don't repeat a study, how do you show that the results are consistent, the ratio is real? Because a lot of social science experiment, you read about article, a lot of articles has been withdrawn. Very scary. A lot of article has been withdrawn. Because why? Somehow, somewhere, people repeated the study, cannot find the effect size, or effect size is actually smaller than reported. Yeah, so this is a problem with a lot of this social science study. Okay, not saying it's not correct, it's just saying that for science to be, it must be replicable. It must be replicable, it must repeat again.
It's not realistic.
Huh?
It's not realistic.
Come again?
It is not realistic to be replicable. How can you guarantee that it will be exactly the same? Especially for human relations, right? Human behavior, right? How can you, even in quantitative, how can you guarantee exactly the same conditions will happen?
Sure.
To be replicable. But
the effect size should not vary too much. Let's go back to inconsistency. For example, if you say that, okay, that's what the study, the one study was that if you sign that I will not cheat, then I find that people who sign that they will not cheat have a lower tendency to cheat in the exam. So there's a certain effect size. So you keep repeating the same type of experiment. Yes, the effect size can vary because of biological thing, but it cannot be that one moment when I sign the I will not cheat, I increase my risk of cheating. Then another study I do, then I found it's protective. Yeah, so it must be consistent. If it's not consistent, then my conclusion is not consistent. I cannot conclude that if you sign the statement that I will not cheat, this will result in people not cheating. I cannot say that anymore because I have non-repeat study. People who sign that, they also cheat, and even worse, cheat more. You know what I mean? So it just means that whatever conclusion came out earlier is not valid. Yeah, so all you can do is tell that so the conclusion is if you sign a pledge that you will not cheat, there is a chance that you will cheat, there's a chance you will not cheat. And you can't tell. Yeah. So that's what I mean by consistency. Okay. So you're right, social science very hard to replicate the study, but at least when you have a similar study, they should show similar results. That's why I do systematic review. They look at different studies, and hopefully all the study shows smoking increases lung cancer. But if there's a study that shows that smoking reduces lung cancer, they must question, is the study correct or not? Because 99 studies show, one weird study shows smoking doesn't cause lung cancer. Then they compare what's the comparator. Then you must be very careful. Yeah. So anyway, strength of association, the stronger, the more evidence that is causality. So I think for smoking was 10 times, yeah, or even higher. That's why they say that it's very likely that it is a causality. Okay, biological possibility. There should be a credible biological mechanism explaining cause effect. It must be explainable. So this is by explainable. Like lighter and smoking and lung cancer, hard to explain.
So is it only
Yes.
for health?
Well, not necessary for health. These are some criteria. Yeah, I mean, if you anything else can be anything. Yeah, like gravity, for example, you drop something, you fall to the ground.
Is it
Okay.
biological?
It's not biological, but there must be. So the formula is called gravity, lah. So it must be It cannot be that I drop something 99% of the time drop on the floor. One time I drop something, the thing float. So far I don't see anything floating, right? Anything floating actually have balloon with helium. But the balloon with helium, after the helium is out, right, it will still drop to the floor. So eventually it will still drop to the floor. The reason why it doesn't drop to the floor because there's some air inside. So it's still consistent. Okay. Specificity, if the cause and effect is very specific, it's more likely to be causal. Now they talk about this plastic, the endocrine disruptor. Not sure you heard all these things. They say that plastic can cause breast cancer, plastic can cause prostate cancer, plastic can cause every single thing, right? Then it becomes less possible because you're using one thing to cause it. Okay, not saying it's definitely not possible, but it's better to be specific, like example, lung cancer and cigarettes, or what exactly is the ingredient inside the cigarette. That's a tar and all the chemicals. Those response again similarly, higher exposure should have higher effect. Reversibility are not always possible, but if you remove the cause and the thing reverses, then you say that it's likely to be causal because you can simulate a improvement by removing it. For example, if there's flower, I sneeze. Okay. Then when there's flower, I sneeze. When there are more flowers, I sneeze more. Then you take away the flower, I stop sneezing. Makes sense that most likely because it's the flower that causing the sneezing. Then, okay, you want to test, you bring fake paper flower. Flower, paper, I don't sneeze. Only when there's a real flower, I sneeze. And if I have a flower that have a lot of pollen, I sneeze more. So you can see that the flower is the causality for me to sneeze. Okay, analogy, again, this is good. When there's a different context to have this can support causal inference. When there's a similar causal relationship in different contexts, that's called analogy. Okay, now we go to the Hughes criteria. Okay, this guy is called Austin Bradford Hill. Very nice picture. English epidemiologist. Okay. So in 1965, he came up with a framework to say, how can we determine whether there's a causal relationship between two variables? These are not strict rules, they are guidelines. Okay, so these are very similar to what I shared just now. So let's go through the Hughes criteria. Number one, strength of association. There's no clinical trial for smoking. Okay, we never do a trial where people are assigned to smoking and people are assigned not to smoke. Yet for a known fact, we know that smoking causes cancer. This one, I think most of you, but in earlier days, nobody knows that, you know. Okay, the smoking caused cancer. You must remember, many years ago, in 1930s, 40s, 50s, even doctors smoke. Okay, it's actually go on an airplane, right? You can actually smoke. So you go on an airplane, you ask you smoking or non-smoking. So many people smoke. A lot of people smoke. Okay, so the study has shown that smoking causes 2,000, so it's 23 times, and women is 7 times. Okay, so that's why it's come at 10 times. So you see, the magnitude is quite high. That's why it is so strong that it should not be disputed. But if A increases the risk of B by a few percentage, then random error. I think just some Mary was saying about what about social experiment where the effect size is quite small, then randomness could explain the difference. So that's why when we repeat the study, you found that it's the opposite direction. Then we are not so sure that A caused B because of randomness. That's why only for this, when you repeat a study and the effect size is big, then you are more certain, but not 100%. You're just more certain. Okay, this is meant by strength association. Consistency, I cover again. So again, do all the study shows that? If all the study shows that, if you repeat a study in another country, in another race, in other things, then more likely this is consistent. Okay. Specificity, I think I cover this endocrine receptor disruptor. So it can cause obesity, diabetes, every single thing. So as more diseases are linked to endocrine receptors disruptor, the less believable the argument becomes because it's longer specific. Okay. So if a single risk factor causes all this, there could be something else. Maybe it's pollution or something that's causing it rather than the single factor that's causing the disease. Okay, temporality, I didn't cover this already. A must be before B. Okay. And of course, the reverse is not true. Just because A is before B doesn't mean A caused B. For example, drug use and mental illness. Which came first? Do you take drugs because you have mental illness, or because you got mental illness, that's why you take drugs? It's also not easy, not easy to distinguish. Because people will take drugs, some of the drugs can cause mental illness. Similarly, some people with mental illness also take drugs because they have to cope with the, for example, depression, they have to cope with the thing. So some of these things must be more specific. Okay. So this is mean by temporality. Which came first? Okay, biological gradient. Again, the more cigarettes a person smokes, the more likely he's going to get lung cancer. Okay. So this is important. Again, for endocrine disruptor, they say that those at low concentration exposed to high concentration gets this. So that's why for endocrine disruptor, it's an opposite. So it's less possible, but it could still be possible. Next, a possibility. For example, if you say that vegetable oil will turn girls into lazy, TV watching diabetic. Not very plausible. Maybe obesity. Okay, anyway, so these are some possibility. Coherence. Okay, so for example, the box. So people who are obese have a lot of pizza box, right? Because they buy a lot of pizza, there's a lot of pizza box, and they're so lazy to throw a pizza box. So you cannot say that the pizza box is causing obesity. Okay, so is it coherent or is it plausible? All these things. Is it consistent? Can you explain it basically? Okay, experiment for certain things you cannot experiment. So there was this interesting BMJ is British Medical Journal. So every Christmas they have a joke article. So this joke article is, do you always need to have a randomized control trial to prove anything? Who thinks you must have a randomized control trial? Put out your hand. Who say don't need to have a randomized control trial?
You say before, no need.
Huh? Yeah?
You say before.
Okay, so the study was saying that do you need to do a randomized control trial to show that parachute protects against death due to fall?
Yeah.
So we get one group of people without parachute, one group of people with parachute, and let them jump. Then we see the death rate compared to two. Then we found that those who jump without parachute all die. Then we found that those without the parachute jump, they survive. Okay, then we found that the parachute protects against death if you fall down. No, you can use prisoners who are doomed for execution. No, they are supposed to die. One way is jumping down the plane could be a humane way of die. Who knows? Yeah, because I tell them, okay, you have a chance. One chance is you go on the electric chair or hanging. Another chance you jump down from the plane. And if they fall onto the sea, they could survive,
No.
No? Cannot.
Above 4 kilometers.
Okay, okay, I don't know that. Okay.
Liquid will be like concrete.
Okay. Or maybe they hide a pillow or something.
5 AM. I don't know.
Doesn't matter. Okay, the point is that actually the point is you don't need you need a DSRB, you don't need a clinical trial to prove every single thing in life. Just like you don't need to do a clinical trial to prove that closing the eyes when cross the road will cause death. Okay, so one group of people close the eyes, cross the road, one group don't open the eyes and cross the road, and compare the death rate. Yeah, so all this, that's why I think you don't always need clinical trial. That's a key. Okay?
Can emulate.
One is emulate, yeah. So
simulate.
it's not possible. And you mentioned RRB will not approve. So analogy, so a virus like rubella can cause cytomegalovirus, is one of the CMV. Okay. Rubella and cytomegalovirus, all these can cause birth defect. So Zika is another virus caused by mosquito. That's why previously, a couple of years ago, there was a Zika outbreak in Singapore. A lot of pregnant women were very concerned because these two viruses can cause birth defect. That's why in Singapore, right, we make every children vaccinated against MMR, measles, mumps, rubella. I don't know whether they have a booster when you become pregnant. Any pregnant woman, do you have a booster for rubella? German measles, can't remember. Okay, anyway, most Singaporeans or from young, a lot of countries will have MMR done. CMV, again, is a virus that can cause that, but I don't think it can prevent it, unfortunately. Okay, Zika virus, just avoid the mosquitoes. Okay, this is all from American Council of Science and Health 2017. Okay, still have some time. So now we talk about Donald Rubin. Wow, this one is very cheap, this one. Okay, this one I'm not expert in this. Okay, very, very cheap. Anyone heard of Rubin? Okay, so basically, each individual has two outcomes. One is under treatment, one is without treatment. Okay. Causal effect. So it's the difference between an individual potential outcome, Y1 minus Y0. But you can only observe one outcome. You realize that. Okay, either is treated, because when you're doing an experiment, you cannot make the person take the drug and don't take the drug at the same time. Actually, you can for those washout studies. One outcome that can be observed. So because of that, this is a fundamental problem of causal inference. Only one of the two outcomes can be observed. So you cannot have individual causal effect. Okay, this is the argument. So you compare one group of patients taking the drug, you compare another group not taking the drug. In a much more theoretical basis, you're comparing two different groups, not an individual. Right? You think about it, because you cannot make the person take the drug and don't take the drug at the same time. Even you do a washout study, means this person take the drug, after a few weeks don't take the drug. The time is different. He can be 2 weeks older, 4 weeks older. So there's some slight differences in it. Or he could be, because the exposure caused a difference in it. Maybe because of lingering effect of the drugs also. So it's not so straightforward. That's why I come up with this called ATE, which is the average treatment effect. This is the average treatment difference between treated and untreated across the population. This is how you estimate causal effect. So randomized trial use that. So it's for causal inference due to two different random assignment by two groups. Okay. And then for observation studies, you can use this statistical adjustment called propensity score matching. I saw Lisa doing it. Anyone heard of propensity score matching? Okay. So very simple. It just look at people of different profile. Okay. Before you do the study, you match them and by these variables, and then they simulate a randomized trial. Okay, so this is how you can do propensity score matching to have similar cohort. Okay, so this is Rubin causal model. If anybody interested can read more. Okay, and finally, I think I'm reaching the last slide. This is called DAG, Directed Acyclic Graphs. Okay, so for computer science, we talk about data structure. For Markov model, we talk about how to visualize what are the different event. Okay, Markov is just a model that doesn't have memory. Okay. So this is something that you need to assume so that the stages are independent of another stage. Because if there's memory, then having pre-diabetes will give you increased risk of diabetes, so on. So the assumption for Markov is no memory. So okay, read more about it. But I want to cover this thing called epidemiology. So this will help to cover certain relationship between causal relationship. It's a tool to show that what is our assumption, what is the direction. This will help to in your analytical approach and also to reduce bias. So before I do the experiment, you already have a rough idea of what is the, based on literature, what is the relationship. Okay. So sorry, not the last slide. So why do we need the DAG or the something acyclic? Go back again. Directed acyclic graphs. This is to clarify a study question and relevant concept. You also need to have your assumption made. Also important thing is to reduce the bias to separate independent effect, individual effect, also to have certain covariate for statistical analysis. So when you do a study, you adjust for them accordingly. And you also estimate the required analysis time. So if you're interested, can go here. I'll send you this. This is a tutorial. I think this is just a broad introduction. I just covered one explanation I created. Low SES, socioeconomic status, lung cancer. Socioeconomic status cause people to smoke and cause lung cancer. So the smoking is the main exposure here. The health outcome is lung cancer. But I need to adjust for SES. Because your socioeconomic status will affect your smoking, you also affect your lung cancer risk. So once you have this relationship, so smoking causes lung cancer. Those with low SES may have different smoking rates. So SES also affects smoking. Okay, usually the lower socioeconomic status may smoke more, but in Singapore, the tax rate is quite high, maybe it's the other way around. But in any case, socioeconomic status will have different smoking rates, either because of income or because of education, or so on. And same thing, socioeconomic status can also lead to difference in the lung cancer detection rate, because the detection can be quite expensive to do. So people with the money may go for screening, people without money may just die suddenly. Yeah. Okay, so this one can also cause lung cancer risk because of access to care, as well as their other living conditions. And then, so that's why SES, socioeconomic status, is a confounder because it influences both smoking and lung cancer. So to have the true effect, you need to do stratification. For the same socioeconomic status, you compare the lung cancer rate in smokers versus non-smoker. That is a fair comparison. This is called stratified sampling or stratified analysis. So you can split the SES into two groups: high SES, low socioeconomic status. Then you compare high SES, smoking rates, lung cancer rate, low socioeconomic status, cancer rate. Okay, now I shall end with the key takeaway. Okay, number one, we cover about risk. What is risk? Probability that event occur in a specified population during a given time. We cover relative risk, odds ratio, rate ratio. I covered many times already. So hopefully this is something that's ingrained. This one is new, attributable risk and population attributable risk. Okay. We covered the difference association versus causation. So association is very easy. So in any paper, write association. You want to talk about causation, you need to go through the Hughes criteria and all the different relationships like biological possibility, temporality, strength, what else? Consistency, specificity, biological gradient, whether you can do experiments, then analogy. Again, all these things are not, you don't need to have all. And even if you have all, doesn't guarantee you causality. It's just higher chance for causality. I'll cover a bit about Rubin causal model because the idea is that you cannot observe the same person with two outcomes because you only have one person. Okay, now they have digital twin. So they try to simulate if you remove a smoking factor, what is it like? But that's still a simulation. But in real life, you cannot observe. You can only see him smoking. You cannot imagine him not smoking because there's only one truth in life. So you can only see this person smoking, is cancer, yes or no cancer. You don't have the same earners not smoking and got cancer because either you smoke or don't smoke. You cannot have another counterfactual. Okay, I'll try to simplify it. And then there's this thing called directed acyclic graph for you to predefine your assumption, predefine your relationship, and you can test it. So this helps for your analysis. Okay, I like to get confused at the end. What am I doing? A lot of times people get confused. So for example, they talk about exercise, smoking, and lung cancer. Then after a while, they they get so excited. Okay, exercise, lung cancer. But actually, they're looking for smoking and lung cancer. But then the exercise is supposed to be a confounder to see whether exercise more or less includes. But then in the end, they just exercise become your main factor. But actually, the whole study is supposed to be on smoking. Okay, that's the end. Any questions? Stop share and end.